Thanks so much for listening. Before getting into today's episode, I just wanted to let you know that I would love to add value to you, your organization, and those you serve through speaking, training, professional development, or coaching. Over the last year, I've been fortunate to work with those in higher education, pre-K-12, and more recently, the corporate space. To learn more, visit my website at cjleadership.com or send me an email at chris@cjleadership.com. I can't wait to hear from you, and now on to our episode. Welcome to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast, where the goal is to improve organizations and serve students one leader at a time. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Jochum. If you're a department chair in higher education or any type of educational leader and you want to improve yourself to better serve and influence those you lead, you've come to the right place, because the best way to improve an organization is to improve its leader. Let's get started. Welcome back, friends, to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast. As you know, I'm always thankful that you're taking time out of your busy schedule to improve yourself as a leader, which we know ultimately improves those you serve and your organization. Today, very excited for our guest, Mr. Todd Bloomer, principal at Churchill High School in San Antonio, Texas. Born in New York, now calling San Antonio, Texas home, Todd is a current high school principal, and with 29 years in education, he served as a teacher, coach, assistant principal, middle school principal, and high school principal. Also, Todd recently published The Blueprint, Survive and Thrive as a School Administrator, a book designed for aspiring and current administrators. And friends, I'm just going to tell you, we could substitute that word administrators and let's just call this a book designed for aspiring and current leaders. Certainly, if you work in what I call a schoolhouse, I don't care if that's a high school, an elementary school, or a college. If you are leading students, you're working in a schoolhouse. And so I'm excited to bring Todd onto the show and let him add value to you as a leader. So Todd, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Hey, Chris, thank you so much for having me today. I totally agree with your statement of if you work in a schoolhouse, you're a school leader. That not only goes for the title of school leader, professor, assistant principal, principal, that's also secretary, teacher. That's also anybody that really steps onto the campus each day. They are responsible for the leadership of the school, of the organization. And so thank you for that. That's a great way to put the school leadership title. So thank you for that.
Well, hey, thank you for writing the book, and we will put the links. Todd has a wonderful website. In addition to his day job, which I promise you keeps him busy, he also somehow finds time to do some coaching and speaking and things of that nature. But hey, the book is out right now. It's on all of the places that you would get books. If you go to Todd's website, you can email him to buy it in bulk. So whether you are leading a higher education organization, I know we have many K-12 listeners, this might be something that you want to incorporate into your PD or a book study moving forward, both your current admin team and some of those that you have in that leadership pipeline. So Todd, let's just get started here. Reviewing the book and certainly I like the preface and what got you started on writing this. It sounds like it started as some advice to your younger brother who is also going into an administrative or leadership role. I guess let's just start there. Is maybe give us a little background on what led you to write this book and some of the things that really highlight, or I should say the highlights of the book that are gonna help leaders.
Yeah, thank you for that. Like all big brothers, wanted to provide support for my younger brother who was transitioning from a high school math teacher to a administrator. And so started off as an email. And it just got bigger and bigger. And soon it was chapters and it was titles. And I opened up a Google Doc and pretty soon I was dumping ideas onto pages. And I felt, something inside of me, there's something in this. And like, I feel like it could help others and not in an egotistical kind of way. It was just, advice and stuff that I'd seen in, basically 18 years of administration that I felt not only would benefit my brother, but would benefit others. And really through this whole journey, I believe that everybody's got a book inside of them. Everybody's got stories that are very valuable to tell. And that's the beauty of 2024 and social media and Google is just the ability to tell that story, whether it be through a blog, simply just, sharing ideas through a blog on day to day, posting on LinkedIn. We're actually sitting down and writing a full book. And so Chris and I, over the course of 6 or 7 years, off and on, I worked on work on this book. And like you said, being a middle school principal at one point and a high school principal now, there's not a lot of time, and you got to craft time and dedicate time to it. It was one of those things that I truly, felt I needed to get out. And there were many times I thought about giving up, and many times I thought, nobody's going to read this. But that's kind of the journey of a school leader. Vulnerability, successes, failures, 2 steps forward, 4 steps back. But just with this desire to get this out there. And I was going to go the Amazon self-publish route. And like, that was, an easy deal. I got held up with the cover, which was, my luck, because then I bumped into Darren Peppard. Dr. P became my friend, and we did a Zoom session while I was supervising a high school basketball game. And so please don't tell the kids that. I stepped out into the hallway, did a Zoom with Darren. He liked what he heard, and he published my book. And the book's been out since August of 2024. And, Chris, I really tell people, one day I was an average principal. Next day I'm a published author, and now I'm a businessman. And now I'm really trying to figure out ways to get this book in the hands of leadership teams, in the hands of people that I think could benefit from it. So the book starts with basically a 30-day entry plan, like really things I think that a good leader should focus on as they're coming in, both practical things to do, but also mindsets that you need to develop to be a good school leader. I got a section in there about hiring, got a section in there about shaping the campus culture that everybody would be proud of. Got a section there about needing a coach. Just because you become a principal doesn't mean you've reached the pinnacle of your leadership career, and who's that person that's going to be, that Nick Saban for you, that is that person that's going to guide you. And then really chapter 6 is my favorite chapter. And if you don't have time to read the book, I would say fast forward to chapter 6, because chapter 6 is basically 10 actionable items that you could take away that I would do differently if I could start this journey all over again. My first year, I struggled as a principal. I've not been the best of principals, through the 10 years. On the outside looking in, I'm an award-winning principal, but on the inside, there's a lot of things I didn't do well. And I've been a good principal and a poor dad. I've been a good principal and a poor husband. I've been a good principal and failed to take care of myself. And really, if I could start over again, I'd start with chapter 6 and knock off each one of those and redo this. But, we can't go back in time, and it is what it is. And so chapter 6 is kind of my ode to the future. Like, start here and you will be successful as you kind of rock and roll from there. So the book's filled with, advice, such structures and systems, things I really feel like you could take away. I have spoke to some college classes here in town. I've spoke to some regional service centers. I'd love to connect and do book studies. I'd love to do a Zoom session with people that have read the book study. The book has received some real praise because, I'm still a practitioner. And I do think that is something that separates my book maybe from other school leaders, and not saying that people writing books right now aren't tremendous and their insight isn't extremely valuable. But, on Monday, December 2nd, when I return to work, I'm going to be doing the same thing that every principal across the state of Texas is and across the country. Don't know what the phone's going to do. Don't know what the office call is going to do. And don't know what my day is going to be like. And so Teddy Roosevelt summed it up best with his man in the arena speech. I'm the man in the arena. I'm bloodied and beaten and, getting my tail kicked. And so, that's the book in a nutshell. It's been a journey, and I'm glad it's out there. And, I'm glad people are reading it. I'm glad it's resonating with people. I really am.
Well, hey, Todd, so much to unpack there, and this aligns perfectly with what I believe and things that have influenced me. You touched on it there, and I think I read this in the book. I think, and you've said vulnerability and man in the arena. I assume, like me, you've been influenced by Brene Brown and some of her work. I always say vulnerability is a leader's superpower.
Mm-hmm.
And, you touched on it. Let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
When you become a leader, and I think this is true in any organization, and I will say in K-12 or in higher ed, leadership is influence, and the most influential people in the organization are those that are on the ground teaching kids every day, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
So I always say titled leader or formal leader. But once you become that formal leader, so you move from the classroom to the principalship, you move from being a professor to a chair. I have found that lifestyle change, and you touched on it. You walk in, you're not there to serve yourself. Like you said, the phone could ring, something could, a minor dumpster fire, a big dumpster fire could happen. Um, do you have any advice or things in the book that you touch on that really will help leaders to realize that once you become that formal leader that is quote unquote in charge, that your life 24/7 looks a little different and you got to give up to go up? And
Yeah,
any
100%.
any
Give up to
words?
go up.
I'm sure 18 years of leadership and close to 30 years of teaching. Sure, you have some advice, but anything you'd like to share?
Yeah. I got a saying that says, as a building leader, you're responsible for everything and you can prevent nothing. And so that is a mindset that no matter the structures and systems you put in place, no matter how many times you review with students or staff or parents, the expectations, you can expect that something is going to falter. And you can get better at stuff. You can build more clarity in your communication skills, clarity in your expectations, but you really have to understand that. And that's a mindset that it takes a while for a building leader to understand that something happens, while it's your fault as the building leader and the fingers point to you, you can't prevent that. And so that's a mindset that now you just have to figure out, okay, how do we prevent this from occurring again? And so really a mind shift. And really in the book, I talk a lot about the mindset that you have to be in to be a good leader. You have to have a great spouse, someone at home that really understands that. Sadly, 5:30 at night, you got plans to do something, the phone may ring, it's your boss, and you may have to detour. Yesterday we were celebrating my son's birthday, and I got a phone call that I had to take. We're on vacation, we're 300 miles from home, and you just have to do that, and you try your best to disconnect, and you try your best to set boundaries up. But as a building principal, as a school leader, you're on call 24/7. And so, really in the book, I talked a lot about how that stress got to me early, and how that stress really just drove me to be, not the person I wanted to be. So really you have to figure out ways to take care of yourself. And that includes, mentally, physically, spiritually, making sure that you are at tune with who you are, and you are, you're doing something to put yourself first. And so just this morning, got up on the, Gulf of Mexico. Here I am in South Padre Island, staring at the ocean and the Gulf of Mexico. Got up at 6:45 and went for a run and watched the sunrise. And while I'll never be mistaken for a runner, it's my way of kind of, centering myself in the morning and getting myself right for the day. And so I think as you kind of move up the ladder, you got to really know who you are and get clear around your priorities and who your expectations. I think you have to understand that, if you want everybody to like you, go sell ice cream at the beach. Everybody loves the ice cream man at the beach. Not everybody likes the principal, and you have to make some very tough decisions. Sometimes you have to say no, or you have to, remove a teacher or remove a student from, or give hard information to parents. And sometimes that's difficult. And in any profession, like, you've got colleagues on a campus that you can go and talk to, but in my high school, I'm the only principal. And so sometimes it's a lonely job at the top, and you just have to make sure you're right with yourself. And I touch in the book about making sure you have a coach and making sure you have someone that you can reach out to, and you could say, hey, am I on the right track, or help me out? And that might be somebody in your district, or that might be somebody like Darren Peppard, who's in Nebraska, which I reach out to and say, what are your thoughts? Tell me what you're thinking. And he doesn't know the people that I'm dealing with. And so he gives me an honest, really take. And so really the book really points out, you got to know who you are. You got to make sure you have a coach. You got to have a supportive family. And you really got to be right with yourself and take care of yourself. In the book, there's a great quote from a friend of mine named Melvin Eckert. Melvin said, as a principal, we take in just stuff, garbage. We take in stress. We take in people's worries and fears. And if we don't have a way to dispose of that, then it just sits on our soul and eats away at us. And that's what burns out most of the principals in the job. They have no way of doing that. Next thing you know, it's midnight and you're still up at school. You're back at 6 a.m. You're not getting anything done. You're eating fast food. You're not doing anything right. And so really, I think the book really just reminds you that you're responsible for everything. You can prevent nothing, get right with yourself. And I think that's the path, or in the book, the blueprint for you to be successful, not just surviving, but trying to thrive as an administrator.
I think everyone can relate to the phrase responsible for everything, which is true, but in many ways prevent nothing because there are so many variables. And just for our listeners, Todd, how many kids you have in your high school?
2,400.
2,400. That
165 teachers,
okay.
5 assistant principals, 8 counselors, about 250 adults that call Churchill High School home each day. It's a small town. I mean, I'm the
Hmm.
mayor of a small town each and every day. I mean, my wife tells me all the time the high school is bigger than the town she grew up in, Iowa. And so, that's just a crazy, crazy, I manage a budget. I mean, all those things that, 30 years ago, I never would have anticipated, doing the hiring of great people, the management of a budget, safety and security of a campus. I mean, you name it. Somehow I'm expected to be responsible for all of it. And it's thrilling and challenging, stressful, but also gets me up each day to come to work to fight the good fight.
Well, you said your wife's from Iowa. I'm from Nebraska and also
Okay.
grew up in a town much smaller. Your high school's probably about almost probably twice the size of the
Oh,
the hometown I grew up in. So you are certainly correct. And I just wanted our listeners that maybe weren't familiar
mhm.
with your school and your district to just get a feel for, I guess, the moving parts and the types of challenges you face. One word that to me sticks out in your book is administrative overwhelm.
Oh yeah.
And I like the word. I don't like what it does to people, but
Mhm.
maybe talk about that because uh, all of us that are leaders, there is that administrative overwhelm piece,
Mhm.
and maybe just how you came to use that phrase and some advice you have for leaders to maybe combat that.
Yeah, it's the new pandemic for principals as far as school leaders, as far as what you go. Like we talked, you're responsible for everything, and I can't do everything on my campus. I mean, nobody can. I mean, Jaime Escalante, or you think about some of those greatest leaders. He's a math teacher, I guess, not as a principal, but some of those great principals. You can't do everything. So one of the things that really I've gotten so much better at in the last 10 years, and if my leadership team is listening, they'll kind of snicker. You have to be able to delegate. And Darren Pepper talks a lot about going from a firefighter running around putting out every single fire yourself to stepping up on the balcony and really observing what's going on. In my first year as a principal, if there was a broken door, well, heck, I'm going to put the work order in, because my last job I was an assistant principal and I was good at work orders and I was good at getting things done, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. Well, that takes you away from the main focus, and your main focus on the campus as a principal is instruction. Instruction, school safety, hiring, in any which order depending on the day. And so, really, you have to get crystal clear on your priorities as a principal to combat the administrative overwhelm, and then you have to have a team that you can delegate responsibilities to, and that it'll get done. I've got an amazing administrative team right now, 5 assistant principals, that if I send a text message to one of them, hey, there's a door that needs a work order put in or something, I mean, it's taken care of. First year principal, if a parent called up and their kid was the third chair in the band and playing the tuba, and they thought they should be the second chair, then I got involved because somehow I thought that I knew what was going on in the band or knew about the tubas. And so I've gotten to the point now where, what, ma'am, that is a conversation you need to have with the band director, because I know nothing about the band, nor do I know about third chair and second chair of the tuba. And so delegating that back to the band director, but then also coming to a realization that I don't necessarily need a follow-up, because like, if you've taken care of it, I know that you've taken care of it, because I don't hear about from that parent again about the third chair and the tuba in the band. And realizing that now, I naturally may want to know how to go. Do you need any help or support? Do you want to role play that, or what do you need? But really, delegation is probably the first thing that I would go with. I also think to prevent administrative overwhelm as a principal, and I talk about it in the book, you've got to have a great administrative assistant or secretary. And that administrative assistant or secretary has to control your calendar and has to really control your email and access to you. We talked about third chair in the band. If somebody calls Churchill High School and wants to talk to me and my secretary, Terry Moran, love her to death, says, what's it about? Well, my daughter is the third chair in the band and she should be the second chair. My secretary will talk you through. And at the end of that conversation, she will set up a meeting with the band director so that is the first place to go. And she'll follow up with me. Sometimes I'm like, no, I'm good. I'll find out if they reach out to me. Then I'll get the details, because I simply can't categorize in my mind all of the different concerns and complaints that come in each day at the lowest level possible. So that's where we want to solve it. So making sure of that. I think you need to use your calendar as your Bible. And I shouldn't say that because it's not a good analogy, but you know what I'm saying when it comes to that. And so Mondays, when we talked about what my main focus was, it was instruction. Every Monday, I block off all day Monday to be in classrooms. That starts off my week on a great note. I mean, the further we get away from the classroom, the easier it is to play office in the office and forget what it's like to be a teacher. But if you schedule a regular day, not just, one period haphazardly, I start off my day, I'm in classrooms and I pop out and I do other things. I go through lunch duties on Mondays. I help with supervision in the hallways on Mondays, but that is my day to get into classrooms and be able to provide support to teachers, feedback for teachers, and just really truly remind myself what it's like to be a classroom teacher, because I haven't taught since 2007. So it's very disingenuous for me to say, well, do it this way or do it that way. I mean, so that is my day. So really utilizing that. And then honestly, the best way to combat administrative overwhelm is to take care of yourself. And so, really putting yourself first. 6-8 months ago, I got up one morning and said, I'm going to go for a jog. And now my phrase is 2 miles a day keeps the doctor away. And I really try my best to get out every single day and jog 2 miles. And in the South Texas heat, it's miserable. It's 100 degrees. So it's 100 degrees forever. But right now we have, November, we actually have what I call an upstate New York summer. We have 70s and 80s and 50s in the morning. And so it is very pleasant to do that. And as James Clear said, you start stacking good days and good habits on top of each other. And pretty soon the routine of your day is I need to get 2 miles in. If it rains, I go to the gym. If I don't get it, I can tell I don't sleep well. I'm ornery. And so I kind of go from there. So I really think that administrative overwhelm, if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't have a great secretary, if you don't delegate, if you don't get into classrooms and use your calendar wisely. And then the last thing, honestly, if I have a bad day, let's say on a Wednesday, I got a very difficult parent meeting, I have to make a tough decision, get the heck out of the classroom and get into the hallways, get into lunch duty, be with the kids. You talked about going from a professor to being a chair, like going back into where the action's happening and where the real work is being done really energizes you. Nothing better than going and sitting in the band hall and just listening to the band play. Nothing better than going out and watching football practice or basketball practice. Nothing better than going and seeing a master, chemistry teacher teaching and inspiring a love of chemistry and what you have. But then also going out there at lunch duty and going up to a table of boys and saying, guys, I'm 5-5 in my fantasy football. Who do I start? And everybody's got an opinion about fantasy football. And that's just the complete beauty of it. And that just builds that relationship. And it makes, in my opinion, school fun. You get advice, kids ask how your team's doing. And so really kind of going from there. And so if you don't put yourself forward, if you don't get out there, administrative overwhelm will swallow you like quicksand. I mean, it'll take you down. And this is why we have people that are leaving the profession after a year, heck, after 6 months. People that are getting promoted faster than ever before. I waited 7 years to get my first principalship. Nowadays, people are waiting 7 months and we're promoting them. And that administrative overwhelm is that new pandemic for administrators. It's just really, it's tough.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. And listeners know that my background, I chair a teacher education department. And so I started my career also in K-12, which is why I see so many connections to just positive leadership. That I think it's a poem or story. Everything I needed to learn in life, I learned in kindergarten. Well, I tell people most of what I learned to be an effective leader, I learned in the K-12 building and classroom, addressing conflict, building relationships. And what you said, so many great things there, Todd, that folks need to take care of themselves. I can tell you, those listening in higher education, You can't when you move into a formal leadership role, just like Todd said, you can't continue to do your previous day job and then do the leadership job on the side. I
Mhm.
think in higher education, because of how we're set up, it's easier to try to masquerade and do that. In Todd's world, he could not. I don't know what you used to teach, but if you were a
Mhm.
math teacher, he could not keep teaching math and then be the principal on the side. It would by
Facts.
lunchtime people would realize that's a problem. If
Mhm.
you were in K-12, this is one of the things that or in higher ed, I tell other middle level leaders this all the time is you got to give up to go up.
Absolutely.
you
It's a
you
great quote.
got to give up. And if you were the expert in whatever, I'll just say if you were the expert in basket weaving design and theory, that's great, but when you become the leader, that's no longer your gig.
Right.
And he touched on it as well. Our administrative assistants,
Mhm.
wow,
Mhm.
they are worth their weight in gold. And
Mhm.
you either control your schedule or your schedule controls you.
Absolutely.
um, Todd, so thank you for putting that out there. And there are enough nuggets of wisdom here that people get his book. This is going to
Thank
help
you.
you. This is not just a K-12 thing. This is if I'm a leader and I'm working with humans and they're causing human issues, which are problems and conflict and all of that. Get out there, get this book. What one thing that you do that we also do in higher education, certainly those that are at the dean, provost, president level, you are in a really big state, and you obviously have to advocate for your kids, your faculty, your community. Talk about the importance of leaders being advocates,
Oh,
and oftentimes that means working at the local level, the state
mhm.
level, with legislative branch, maybe with people that don't think the same thing that we do about
Mhm.
education and teachers and students. Um, Maybe just what's some experience or advice that you have for being that legislative advocate?
Yeah. They used to say space was the final frontier. Advocacy is the final frontier when it comes to administrators. And I think as we are leaders, we have to advocate. We have to fly the flag. We have to be the champion of our school, of our students, the people we lead in our community that we serve. And advocacy can be something that is scary, because I think we think the elected officials don't want to hear from us. But what I've found over the last 4 or 5 years where I've dipped my toe into advocacy and now consider myself, public education advocate, is that they do want to hear from us. And our elected officials, an email or phone call, can set up a coffee visit or a phone call with maybe not the elected official themselves, but with a staffer who is able to provide feedback to that elected official about what a constituent says. Now you have to be very careful because as a public school employee, I'm not speaking for my school district. I'm not speaking for, theoretically my school because we have people that do that for our district. I am a constituent that lives in a zip code that elects or votes for people that serve me. So first thing I would say is, hey, it's pick up a phone, find out Google who represents me, and then from a private email, send them an email and say, hey, I live in your zip code and I'd love to talk to you and figure out where you stand on, maybe it's public education, but maybe it's something else that you're really, passionate about. And can we set up a time for a phone call, a Zoom session, or can we get coffee? And the local officials, I've met local officials at Starbucks, local restaurants, that they just spend a lot of time with because they do want to hear from constituents, and they realize at the local level that sadly we have such apathy that if I'm willing to pick up the phone and come meet with you, I'm going to vote. And so this is an opportunity for them to be able to, influence me or try to secure my vote. And they probably realize if I'm willing to go have coffee with you, that I will influence, 10 people, let's just say. And in some elections that could sway that could sway the vote. And so I would say that. So I would say to them, hey, while I work in a school, I don't speak for the district, but I do have some unique insight that I think is valuable to you. And I used to think like, oh, I'm going to influence them right away and they're going to vote right away. But then I realized that advocacy is like playing chess. It's a long game. And so it is not, a quick game where it's over. It is a game where I am trying to plant seeds in somebody's mind that if the elected official gets put on an education committee or an elected official is put on a safety and security committee, and they think I need some insight to how this would affect school districts or school leaders in my community, who do we know that we can call? Like, that's my ultimate win. I want them to say, you know what? There is a guy who lives in our tenant zone, just so happens to work at a school. I think he would have some insight over the safety and security of the campus. Because what I don't want to do, and I'll use cell phones as an example. Right now, cell phones, it's a popular, let's ban them. Let's just completely ban them from schools. And let's, and while that sounds amazing because we know how much of a distraction it is, that would cause extreme concerns on my campus if we just went to locking them up in the morning before school started. And so we now this year have a philosophy, have a program at Churchill High School where we go bell to bell, no cell. So when you walk into the classroom, you are expected to put your phone in your pocket, your backpack, and if you can't do that, in a teacher pocket. And we really capitalize and try to say to you, you are a young adult. We want to treat you like a young adult. So when you're in class, you're here to learn. So put your phone away. And to be honest with you, on one hand, I can count the number of people who have defied that and said, no, I'm good. I'm not going to comply with our directive. And so we have developed something at Churchill High School that works for us. Now, if the state of Texas comes out and says every school is going to do the exact same thing, every school is going to get a yonder pouch and lock them up in the morning, I would not be in favor of that. I'm not against banning cell phones, right? And the word's not really banning. We're restricting time they can use them, because you can use it during passing period, before school, lunch, and after school. And I think that speaks to a kid. A kid, you know what? They may have to check their phone to see about work, or they may just want to text their girlfriend, meet me at lunch, or they may want to check Instagram. But like, I don't want to lock it up, because this has worked for us. It's worked for teachers, it's worked for kids, and it's worked for the community. So if in the state of Texas, there is buzz right now about banning cell phones completely. And I have shared with state senators and local officials, before you do that, I'd love to just share what we've done. Now, what does that look like? It could be a Zoom. It could be a phone conversation. If I could get my district to allow it, you can come out and look in my math class or social studies class to see what it looks like, and to see that kids comply with it before you force me into a confrontation, because that cell phone's $1,000. And some of those kids worked all summer to get that phone, and they may not trust that the teacher will protect it or will get it back. And parents, they want to be able to access their kid at all times. God forbid if something bad happens, they want to be able to text their kid immediately. And if we have them locked up, securing those phones and getting them out might not be the top priority for what we have. So how does that relate back to advocacy? Like, I want to share unique experiences with those elected officials, because those elected officials, when they went to school, there wasn't a cell phone problem in schools. They went to school 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, when schools were totally different. Heck, 30 years ago when I was in school, schools were totally different. So I want to be able to be that voice for my elected officials. And I want to be able to advocate for my kids for what they need. Now, that could be talking about vouchers. Vouchers has been something that has been, in the news, and I want to share my unique insights about that. I want to be able to, but it's not just school-related stuff. If you are passionate about other topics, your elected officials are just that, your elected officials, and they will listen to what you say. They won't always vote what you say, but if they don't, then you have an avenue to be able to express your displeasure for that. So I think the final frontier, the part that we're concerned with, is like, the president's never going to call back Todd Bloomer to talk to us. But you start at local levels, your school board, your elected officials in your state, your state board, and then even your state representatives that go off to Washington, D.C. And honestly, you can never be afraid to talk to one of their staffers, because those staffers move up quickly. And if the elected official all of a sudden becomes a state senator or a House of Representatives member, you've built a relationship with them through the years. So you got to look at advocacy as a long man's game. It's not going to win overnight. You have to be patient. You can't be frustrated. You don't make threats with people, and you just share. I don't speak for my district, but I got a unique insight. And I really feel that every school leader, from deans to superintendents, to principals, to professors, it's their moral, it's their obligation to advocate for what we're doing. This is a higher calling. And if I'll share it this way, if we banded together as educators, K to 16, K to 12, and then college, we would never ask for anything ever again if we banded together and voted as a block, because people realize people don't vote. And if we could galvanize every teacher just in the state of Texas, every leader in the state of Texas that works in a school to get out and vote, we wouldn't be asking for pay raises. We wouldn't be asking for extra funding. And so this has become my passion to be able to get out there and be my champion for my students. And I will share this, any leader that's listening, the people that you serve, when they know that you are advocating at the state and local and even national level, there's a higher respect for you as a leader, because they know that you're not only just talking the talk, but you're actually on your own time out there advocating for it. Because I said your own time, because you got to be careful about that. You can't use, school email. You can't use school hours. This is something you do outside of it, which takes you away from family and friends and your health, but you know how important it is, so you prioritize it. So that was a long answer to that, but I'm extremely passionate about it. I could talk about it for hours. I would say just dip that first toe, make that first phone call, make that first email, and say, can we talk? Have some points that you want to talk about. And then when you hang up or are done, you will feel really good about it, and you'll want to find another official that you can talk to.
I appreciate that, Todd. That's in a good way a mini masterclass in the value of advocacy. And I think you touched on something that maybe folks listening have not thought about, is that we all have our day job, but we are all citizens voting, citizens in our zip code. And I think that that's really important. And I love that you stress that it's not only a long game, but it's the final frontier, because that's so important. And if we don't advocate, we're all in the teaching business. If we don't advocate, which for things that ultimately affect our students, the average person at the grocery store may not do it because they don't see things like we do, certainly like you do in your field, from the ground level. I also like that you touched on culture and climate in your building, and how you've been able to do something that makes sense for you. Cell phones are, I think, a topic that most people have an opinion on. I'm not in K-12 anymore, but like you, I would approach them as any other behavior or expectation. Back in the old days, if students were, getting another thing out and looking at it and getting distracted and using it to not be on task, I always say, let's pretend it was a pencil. We'd take the pencil away. Well, maybe temporarily, but I don't think we'd ban pencils in schools because kids were using them to get distracted. I think we'd find a way to make it work, and so sounds like you've also have done that. So as we, one thing I do like to ask our leaders, Todd, is as we close out, and again, get the book. I think he's given you some great things to dig into. I guess I'll just turn it. Anything that you would like, closing thoughts, advice, maybe a few more things in the book that you want to share. Anything that you would like to comment on as we close out our time together?
Yeah, nothing would make me happier to sit with someone who read the book and either hop in a Zoom free of charge. I mean, I would do it out of the goodness of my heart, because education is a calling, and it takes a special person. And as I've been in this 29 years, I'm closer to the end than the beginning, and I will step away. And in some kind of weird way, I want to ensure that the baton that I hand off to the next principal, not necessarily of Churchill High School, but just in general, is equipped with the tools to be successful, to take schools to where I couldn't take them. I've done a good job at Churchill. The place is a wonderful. I mean, the satisfaction of teachers is off the chart. The kids' satisfaction. I mean, it's a good place, but there are things that I could do better, and I realize that. And I think that the book is a starting point where it could take a young leader or a seasoned leader that might be with that administrative overwhelm, and it might be something that could respark, or it might be something that could say, oh, I could implement this tomorrow, and I think I could get that. And just like with anything, the book is only as good as, how much you implement from it. And I would love to jump in and kind of facilitate a book study with either potential leaders or leadership teams. I've done that and I've gotten better at it, and I've kind of fine tuned it to the point where we've got some great reflective questions, some practical questions, and some great takeaways that we could do. And I'd be honored to do that with anybody out there. I'd also be honored. I've Nick Saban talks about sit with winners. The conversation's different. If you want to get to be a principal, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to principals that you respect and say, do you have time for coffee, or can I hop on a Zoom and really pick their brain? And I would offer that to anybody that's listening to your show. I would do the same thing. Pick up a copy of the book or not. I'd be honored if you did. Pick up a copy. Let's talk about it, or let's just work through, some questions or some things that are on your mind. Because ultimately, when I step away from the principal, shameless plug, I would like to continue my work in the field to be an advocate for principals and to be a coach, a confidant, and someone that could help someone grow. Nothing would make me happier than to visit a school and spend a day, a week, 2 weeks with them each day and really develop a blueprint for them to be able to be successful. Because I had that. I was blessed to have people that took care of me. And that's why there's a whole chapter in the book really about just mentorship and you needing a coach. And so, the book's an easy read. It's practical. I think there's a lot of aha moments in the book. I think there are things that will resonate with every leader, from a first-year leader to a 29-year leader. And I think walking away, you could say, hey, this is good, or this is me, or let me reflect back on this. And if there's anything I can do to follow up to be able to help or support, whether it's college classes or kids thinking about going back, adults going back in their master's programs and wanting to get into administration. And if anybody's in South Texas and wants to come visit Churchill and walk the walk and see what we do, Mikasa Sukasa when it comes to offering that. Because honestly, at the end of the day, and I guess I could sum with this, we're only as good as each other. And if we're not willing to take care of each other and give back to each other and to offer help and support to each other, then the profession crumbles. And then when it crumbles, the kids suffer. And so if we take that calling to say, you know what, I don't know this guy, but I'm going to pick up the phone and say, I'm here for you, then I think that's really what we are. LinkedIn, X, or Twitter, email, my website, any of those ways are great ways to reach out. It really, the book, I think, just kind of summarizes, ultimately it was written to be kind of that one-on-one coach was my desire. And obviously that's not plausible or feasible, but that was a desire. You could read this and it would be like having a coach with you.
Well, I strongly encourage everyone to pick this up. Those of you that are in higher ed, certainly my colleagues that are listening that are in teacher education, take Todd up on that. He'll be easy to find. You can Google him now. He has his own website. I think it's toddmbloomer.com. But I'll put the links in the show notes here. Be a wonderful Zoom guest in one of your classes. If you're in charge of an educational administration program, be it building or district level, be a wonderful book to have in the toolbox.
Thank you.
And I think it would be great for practicing teachers. I think one of the ways that we build a mutual understanding and even future capacity is to let the teachers in on what we're thinking as leaders. Let them understand our viewpoint. So Todd, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know the folks that have listened today, they're better for it. You are now part of their network, which, as John Maxwell says, your network is your net worth. And so you touched on it perfectly, is let's help each other and build our professional capacity. So Todd, thank you so much. Everyone, check out the book, The Blueprint, Survive and Thrive as a School Administrator. And as always, thank you once again for taking time out of your busy schedule. And we will see you next time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for listening to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast. If you want to learn more about my leadership philosophy and how to be an effective chair, please consider my book, The Department Chair, A Practical Guide to Effective Leadership. You can find this and learn more about me by going to cjleadership.com. Also, please be sure to like this podcast, leave a review, and share with your colleagues. Thanks again for improving your organization and those you serve by improving yourself. Take care.